In our last lecture module, we took a larger view. We looked at the three elements of a formal system that must be there in order for it to function correctly. We looked at the symbol system, or the language, the set of representations that captures the underlying structural relationships that we're going to try and exploit with our formal system. And I called that the formal system. In order to operate in a way that takes advantage of this new information, we can't just process it using our native System 1 processing because it's now stripped of content. It's just structure. And so we create these decision procedures, these strategies or techniques or methods for processing this information. And in our case, we're very lucky. We have an effective decision procedure. We have this systematic mechanical process. As long as we follow this process in a step-by-step fashion, executing it correctly throughout, we will always get an answer about the validity or invalidity of an argument in categorical logic, and that answer will always be correct. Finally, formal system, the decision procedure, they're just a bunch of squiggles until we're able to translate the problems in the world into the formal system. And in order to do that, we have to adopt a set of translation heuristics, a set of strategies for maximizing the power of our system by cramming as much of a complex and variable world into this simple problem-solving system as we possibly can. In this module, we're going to turn specifically to categorical logic and execute those three components. We'll start by talking about the elements of a categorical statement. Remember, all arguments are simply structured collections of statements. In the case of categorical logic, those statements are categorical statements. Categorical statements relate classes to each other. How do they do that? Well, they'll have a subject term and a predicate term that pick out classes of things. They'll have a copula and a quantifier that tell us how much of a particular class is related in what way to the other class. Once we've clearly delineated the elements of a standard form categorical statement, we'll specify the four standard form categorical statements that we'll use to spell out our entire logic. Those four statements, together with the negations, will be everything that we consider in categorical logic. Now, those categories in these categorical statements have two different interpretations. There are two different ways of understanding categories. The Aristotelian or traditional interpretation, where every category, every class has to have at least one existent member, or the modern or Boolean interpretation that does not have that requirement. They can have empty classes, classes that specify nothing. Now, that seems like a small difference. You wouldn't think the difference between the class of horses and the class of unicorns was really that dramatic. But in logic, it makes a tremendous difference. As we'll see, the traditional or Aristotelian interpretation allows for many, many more valid argument forms than the modern or Boolean interpretation does, all because of that one simple assumption. We'll focus in on the Boolean interpretation, on the modern version of categorical logic, in part because it's just simpler. There are fewer necessary logical relationships, makes the logic easier to use, easier to learn. We'll illustrate this by showing you the modern square of opposition. It just takes those four standard form categorical statements and it graphically illustrates the necessary logical relationships that exist between their truth values. There's only one. As I said, it's a simple logic, the contradictory relation. Let's get started. Our subject terms and our predicate terms are the elements of our categorical statement that pick out classes. The subject term is always the first term. It's always the one that is the object of relation. So it's being related to, included in, or it's being excluded from. And it's always in that first slot. The predicate term is always in the second slot. And it's the class that is either being said to include or exclude that subject class or some of its members. The relationship between the subject and the predicate class gets specified in our logic using copula and quantifiers. Our copula are on top. Basically, we only have one verb in our categorical logic. I think of it as the pirate logic, because it has just that one verb, "ar" and "ar not." Those are our only verbs. Again, because we want to try and make our logic as simple and easy to learn as possible, we restrict the forms of categorical statements to these four standard form categorical statements. They all have "er" as our verb. The amount of the subject class that's being included in or excluded from the predicate class will be determined by the quantifier. We have two universal quantifiers. Every member of the subject class, all. No members of the subject class, no. All the quantities in between, from 100 to 10,000 to 3 to just 1, are covered by the third quantifier, sum. And we'll understand sum as there is at least one. We'll use our standard form quantifiers together with those copulas to join our subject and predicate classes together to form our 4 standard form categorical statements. Each of them has a name, but because we're logicians, our name isn't very creative. This is the type A statement. It's a universal affirmative categorical statement. Here's our type E statement. It's a universal negative categorical statement. Here's our type S statement. It's a particular affirmative categorical statement. And here's our particular negative, type O categorical statement. So type A, universal affirmative. All dogs are mammals. Type E, universal negative. No dogs are reptiles. Particular affirmative, some dogs are chihuahuas. Particular negative, some dogs are not cats. Some dogs are not chihuahuas. So with those 4 standard form categorical statements, we're going to spell out our categorical logic. We should note some important properties of each of these statements. They all have a quality, and the quality is either affirmative or negative. Affirmative quality means that the subject class is being included in the predicate class, either all of it in the case of a universal or some of it in the case of a particular with those sum quantifiers. Negative categorical statements are ones in which the subject class is excluded from the predicate class, either all of it in the case of universals or at least one member of the subject class being excluded from the predicate class in the case of particulars. Our quantifiers determine how much of the subject class is included in, affirmative, or excluded from, negative, the subject class. The universals, all S or P, affirmative, universal, all the members of the subject class in the predicate class. The universal negative, type E, no members of the subject class are members of the predicate class. The particular affirmative, some members of the subject class, that is at least one, are members of the predicate class. And particular negative, some members, at least one of the subject class, are not members of the predicate class. The last property that we want to highlight is distribution. Distribution refers to whether or not every member of a subject or a predicate class is included in the relationship specified by that standard form categorical statement. And the rule is universals distribute subjects, negatives distribute predicates. So our universal affirmative will have a distributed subject because it's universal and an undistributed predicate because it is a affirmative. So all dogs are mammals. That says something about every dog. It does not say something about every mammal. Our universal negative, that has a universal that distributes the subject. It's a negative. It distributes the predicate. So no birds are snakes. That says something about every bird. It's not a snake. And something about every snake. It's not a bird. Our particular distributes neither. Some dogs are chihuahuas. That doesn't say something about every dog. And it doesn't say something about every chihuahua. Our universal negative, however, does say something about every member of the predicate class. So some dogs are not chihuahuas. That says something about that class of chihuahuas, namely that there's at least one dog, call it Marmaduke the Great Dane. None of those chihuahuas is that dog. Now, what about the different interpretations of the classes? We call it the Aristotelian or traditional interpretation, was one that was originally invented by Aristotle. The idea is simply that classes that we're going to reason about are classes of real things: stars, Greek, ships, animals. My logic, he says, applies only to non-empty sets, sets with at least one member. Boole comes along, and Boole says, look, that's all great and everything, but I also want to be able to reason about numbers, and round squares, and unicorns, and leprechauns. So my logic is going to apply to both non-empty and empty classes, sets that have no members at all. The Boolean interpretation, therefore, results in the two necessary logical relationships holding between individual categorical statements: the contradictory relationship. The contradictory relationship asserts that if one of the related statements is true, the other must be false. That first one is true, the second must be false. So a type E statement, if no herbivores are carnivores, is true. Then a type I statement, a particular affirmative, some herbivores are carnivores, will be false. If a type O statement, some elephants are not from Africa, is true, then a type A statement, all elephants are from Africa, will have to be false. We'll pick this up in the next lecture module.